the panel discussion will be on the impact of digital in 2013 elections and beyond. And fortunately enough, we have a dynamic group of panelists, namely Ms. Gang Badoy, Communications Director of Change.org, Ms. Nina Tirol-Zialcita, Head of Communications of Office of Senator Bam Aquino, and this session will be moderated by your IMAP Director, Mr. Carlo Ople. However, before we call on the panelists in front, let's give Ms. Zialcita a few minutes to have a quick presentation, and then we'll invite the panelists to come in front. So thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Are you guys still awake? Who here tuned into yesterday's explosive hearing? Either on your live stream, on Twitter. Yeah, on Twitter, right? Okay, so we'll be touching on that a bit later, but I'd like to talk about, wait, hang on, where do I find my, do I go na ba? Okay, there. So I'd like to talk about public leadership in the age of #social. Okay, you'll have to bear with me. I like to walk around when I present. There's the screen. So before that, I'd like to acknowledge my co-panelists later, Gang, and I think I saw Carlo somewhere. All right. Okay, so let's start. I'll have to do mano-mano here. Wait lang. Ano ba to? All right, okay. So, wait, I can't walk around pala because of the mic. I'd like to think that some of you were among the 15 million plus voters who voted for my principal. So, I work for the office of Senator Bam Aquino. He's currently the youngest senator in the 16th Congress. But don't worry, I'm not here to campaign. Campaign is over. And he told me, please tone down on the politics. We're not here to talk about politics. But I had this message cleared with him before I went on stage here. So, it's really one thing to campaign and win. So again, if you were tuned in during the elections, if you were, part of the voting public who really wanted to see what, the candidates had to say, we bombarded you basically with all of these messages. And if you happen to like our Facebook page, if you followed us on Twitter, it was 90 days of yellow. And you would see in the screen, this is a shot of a spread of a magazine that we produced to commemorate the elections. And it really talked about how we created the message and how we stayed on message during the campaign. But it was really all about, branding, being focused in your messages, being disciplined in the communications. And as you will see, we really tried to keep a very cohesive look. So whether you were following us on Facebook, Twitter, if you were following Senator Bam on Instagram, we were inundating you with all of these images and messages. But that's just one part of the story because, again, it's really just one thing to campaign and win. That's actually the easiest part. And if you notice, a lot of politicians really invest a lot of energy, a lot of time, a lot of resources on the campaign. But, what happens after? So, hang on. Okay. It's really another thing altogether to prove that you can lead and govern in the age of social. And if you notice, I'm using hashtags. So, what does it really mean to be a public leader in the age of social? It goes beyond campaigning. It goes beyond, being on social. We've all talked about, likes to engagements to ROI. For the voting public, for the Filipinos today, how do you measure the ROI of, voting people into office? Over the past few days, we've been besieged by all sorts of, images, updates, headlines of the scandals that are rocking the country. So, ano ba talaga yung ROI when we talk about public leadership, in the age of digital media? I'd just like to talk about, some things we learned along the way, coming from a really heavy campaign to now getting our feet wet in Congress. Well, I've been a Senate staffer for a number of years, but my boss is very new to the Senate. So, he also likes to bring with him, the freshness of a newbie. But one thing we learned in the age of social really is that sometimes you're tempted to use social media, to just send out your messages. It's really about what am I going to say? How am I going to, boost sales, boost engagement? How am I going to, share all of this content that I have? But what we learned as public servants is that in the age of social, we really need to listen. And I know a lot of you are familiar with listening tools, diba? Radian 6 and all of that. So it's one thing to listen in that tracking, monitoring sense. But it's another thing to really listen, to be able to empathize with people, to be able to see what the public pulse is. And what social media has given us, those of us in the public sector, is that we have real instant feedback on everything that's happening. So, again, in the age of social, it's really about listening to the people, listening to suggestions, listening to feedback, and listening to what people need. Another point I'd like to make is that the social revolution has brought us so many tools now to be able to engage. And here on screen, okay, here, ayan. So you'll see here some headlines I picked out. And it says, crowdsourcing, the story of the drafting of the Magna Carta for Philippine Internet Freedom. Who here has heard of the Magna Carta for Philippine Internet Freedom? Konti pa lang. But you'll find that on hashtag MCPIF if you're on Twitter. Check it out. Yesterday marked the first anniversary of actually crowdsourcing this bill. So I'll just segue to a short story. This happened August 29 last year. People can get really hyper on Twitter, diba? There tends to be a lot of Twitter discussions about a certain subject. But after a while, when you're discussing now, there should be more internet access, there should be internet freedom, we should do something about the cybercrime law. You reach a certain point where you become saturated with all of the ideas and you just want to be able to translate it to action. So what did we do? During my break, I opened the Facebook page, and at the time, it was called Philippine Netizens Bill of Rights. We said, if we really are serious about putting together a Magna Carta for internet freedom, let's do it already. So we opened the Facebook page. In a few minutes, over 100 people were already connected to that Facebook page. It was a Facebook group. And then that's where the conversations really blossomed. That's where people started meeting up, on Hangouts, meeting up in cafes. We opened up a Google Docs, and just a few months later, an actual bill, an 85-page bill, was completed. It was filed by Senator Miriam last year in the Senate, Representative Kimiko Huangco in the House, and then this year, my principal, Senator Bam Aquino, also filed his version of the Magna Carta for Internet Freedom, and I'm not able to show very clearly that upper headline over there, but it was an analysis of how the bill was made, and they called it a success, an early success of crowdsourcing, because for the first time in history, we have a bill that was created by the citizens themselves, people who really cared about this issue. And for all of us who are on digital, for all of us who are on social media, this is probably a tool that we want to get interested in, because it pretty much spells out our rights as netizens, the freedoms we want to be able to enjoy. In our version, it also talks about, possibly giving free wireless access, in public spaces. So there's a lot of opportunity, and crowdsourcing is only the beginning. Senator T.G. Gangona also authored the crowdsourcing bill. So you might want to check it out, because for the first time, we have in our hands the tools to actually do something about the laws of this country. Diba? So again, in the age of social, we need to democratize access and influence. And we're doing that by really putting policy together in the virtual space where all of you can see it, all of you can comment, diba? All of you can give your own suggestions. And this is what I'd like to call People Power 2.0. We also saw the million So the Million People March, tama ba yung hashtag? Million People March nung Monday? That's what it was called, diba? So that was one form of people power, but another form of people power is to really get down and dirty even if you're online. You know, you can help create a bill, you can help correct something that you see, you can help send something to your legislators and say, hey, take a look at this. This matters to us. Okay, which brings me to the next point. Hang on. Okay. In the age of social, governance really means always being an advocate. I'm not sure, okay, the quote isn't very clear, but I'll just read a quote. One of our favorites from the late Senator Ninoy Aquino. We put this up on our cover page a few days ago to mark the 30th anniversary of his passing and also to mark National Heroes Day. So it says, we should not depend on one man. We should depend on all of us. All of us are expendable in the cause for freedom. And therefore, I say, stand up now and be a leader. And when all of us are leaders, we will expedite the cause of freedom. What does this mean for us? You know, for us who are, you know, whether we're working in brands, in advertising, you know, and behind a lot of these technologies, we now have a chance to really shape the way people access information. You know, there are some people here who will be talking about freedom of information. A bit later, I'll be talking a little bit lang about, you know, what's going on in the Senate right now. My boss asked me specifically to please share some of our thoughts with you. But the idea is, in this age, hindi na pwede yung usual politician na you know, you get up, you make a speech, you know, you're all patronizing, and then you know, there's no feedback from the crowd. There's no feedback from people. You don't listen. You just listen to your small group of advisors, whoever they may be. So now, governance really means being able to get out there, work with people, listen to feedback, you know, and look at what really matters to people. And what matters right now, okay, I'm going to make a little plug for this, okay? What matters right now is, you know, there's a lot of BS going on. A lot of it has been going on probably for decades, probably since, you know, I wasn't even born yet. But a lot of things are being brought to light now because of certain revelations, because of what's going on, you know, with the PDAF, and with certain personalities. So, diba? I will not name names, pero, you know, if you've been tuned into the news, you know what's happening. And I'd like to just take a quick poll. Who here thinks that the PDAF should be abolished? Please raise your hands higher. Okay. There's a number of you. Okay. Who here thinks that it shouldn't be abolished? It should be maintained. Okay. There are also a couple. Who here does not have any comment? Okay, there's one brave soul who admitted. How about the rest? No opinions. Are we, you know, apathetic to what's going on? But okay, the idea behind this is that, you know, that's the reason why we're also presenting this now, is that, you know, for the longest time, our lawmakers were probably stuck in their, you know, ivory towers, diba? Small group of consultants, people who didn't really bother to look at what's going on. But now that everything is exploding online, we have the ability to really look at what people think. And when we saw, because our office is a very new Senate office, we came on board just 2 months ago. Wala pa kaming sweldo kasi wala pa ngang nire-release na mga budget. So when this exploded, our, you know, Senator Bam immediately said, I think I'd like to abolish, you know, I think I'd like to suspend our PDAF. What do you guys think? So we started engaging in online conversations with netizens. We looked at what was going on. And when it became really clear that, you know, people felt that this had to go, we became one of the first to suspend ours. So we called for suspension on a Friday morning. Friday noon, the president called for suspension. Monday, there was the Million People March in Luneta where people were really fuming and expressing all their outrage over the corruption that's going on. And on Tuesday, after that, we filed Senate Bill number 1356, or the People's Fund Bill. And we're going to put this up online on our page, so you can take a closer look at it. The actual text of the bill is already in our page, so we're inviting people to, please send us your comments. We'd like to crowdsource this as much as we can, because the idea of the People's Fund Bill is, instead of your taxes going to legislators and legislators deciding on who will ultimately get these funds, we should have a say in where these funds go. So when we file our taxes, we'll be able to choose, will it go to certain accredited charities? Will it go to local priority projects? Will it go to your favorite political party? So it tries to bring control to the hands of the people. But again, we don't have the answers. We want to know what people think. So that's why I'm putting it out there. But again, this is just the beginning of the conversation. What really matters is the age of using social media for mere campaigning is over. Diba? Even for brands, it's already about engagement, it's about listening, it's about connecting. And for us, it's also really about collaborating. We need a government that collaborates with the people. That's why we're opening the crowdsourcing tools to you guys. We're opening access to feedback, because we see that, our leaders can't do it by themselves. And actually, if you ask me personally, a lot of our leaders are not equipped to do the job, diba? So we have to engage. So here, I'd like you all to connect with us. If you have any, suggestions, any laws you'd like us to pass, any feedback on the People's Fund Bill, any feedback or information on, PIDAF, or anything for that matter, we encourage you to really engage with us, because that's what governance should be about in the age of social. And we believe that when we collaborate more closely, diba, it's going to pave the way for a lot more reforms, and hopefully, in the next elections, in the next congresses, we won't have to deal with issues such as the kinds of issues we're dealing with now. Sana it becomes, the starting point for real change in a country that really deserves it. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Linia. At this point, could I call the panelists? Ms. Gang Badoy, yeah. Could you join them there? And Carlos. So I'll hand this over to you now.
Okay pa kayo? It's a Friday night, and we're here. Okay, thanks, Nins, for that very informational presentation. Very yellow. Naka-red naman daw siya, Gang. So baka to kick things off, Gang, baka maybe you can tell the people about yourself and change.org, just so everybody knows then what's it about.
I think when this was scheduled last month, this session would have been predicted as the most boring one. But I think in the last week and a half, I think this proves to be a bit more interesting than it would have been. My name is Gang. I'm also part of Rock Ed Philippines, but today I'm representing Change.org. I can't separate those, but I'm here. Change.org is yun yung petition website. Change.org is a tech company. Tech company siya, parang Facebook, parang Twitter, ganyan. And anybody can host petitions. The most famous one, I think the first one that broke into the scene, was the petition for Sting not to perform in SM. And narinig ni Sting because Change.org is an international website, so I guess umabot sa kanya. No, whether you're for it or not, it's really a first example. It's not even overwhelming. Alam mo, 400-something signatures lang yon, but it was heard. Another petition siguro recently, usual question is, paano kung may competing petitions? Will you still host it? Yes. Yes, we will. Like right now, merong dalawa. Yung isa, keep the elephant in Manila Zoo. Yung isa, ship the elephant to Thailand. Ganyan. So we host both, so we can host anything. When reading petitions, in interpreting petitions, I think it's important in this day and age that it's not a numbers game, obviously. Kasi yung FSGO, former senior government officials, petition for the ombudsman to probe has 16,000 signatures. Luneta has maybe around the same amount, pero yung handwritten, about 50,000 na. People signed on-site in Luneta, over 50,000 signatures. It's still not heard. So it's not a numbers game, obviously. Halimbawa yung sa elephant, mas maraming signature kasi yung ship the elephant to a sanctuary in Thailand because she belongs with other elephants, ganyan. Yung isa, stay in Manila Zoo because mas konti yung signatures doon, pero mas maraming veterinarians doon. So, because yung point ng vet ay, ng veterinarian ay matanda na siya, ito yung life niya, you might endanger her health in the transport. Second, ever since baby si Mali, yun yung pangalan ng elephant, ever since baby si Mali, taga dito na siya eh. She no longer speaks elephant eh. So, it's so hard, ano bang language? Paano ba sabihin yun? She no longer has the language of an elephant that lives with other elephants. So, yun yung point. So, I'm only illustrating this because it's not a numbers game. So, whoever you petition will certainly consider who is signing. What's my role? My role is I'm the one that hand carries your petitions to the people you're petitioning to. For example, akong maghahatid kay Conchita Carpe Morales next week. Ako maghahatid kay Secretary Pahe if you have a DENR petition. Ako maghahatid sa Jollibee if you want more sauce on the spaghetti. May isang petition na ako yung nagpo-push, yung South Korea na pogi. Gusto ko nasa billboard siya sa Guadalupe. Kasi ang tagal ko lagi sa Guadalupe, maglagay naman kayo ng pogi na kilala ko. Parang ganun. And the range I'm showing now is you really have to give it a range from the profound, which is probably Release the Bansil Sisters, Find Jonas Burgos, all the heavily obvious human rights movements. But it can also be as shallow as, please bring Justin Bieber to Cagayan de Oro, or no to Ben Affleck as Batman. May mga ganun na petition. And while some, for all of us reading, some more important than others, I think it's just important that we're heard. If you're going to ask me, although I do not have the approval of our Change.org superiors in the UK or the US or Australia, I really want to push Change.org as a consumer rights tool, more than a political tool. But today, that's our topic, so I will stick to that. I think I spoke too much. There we go.
It's okay, it's okay. Okay, so to get the ball rolling, maybe let's take a look back at 2010 and 2013. And I'll just throw this to the group, no? So what did you think politicians did wrong? Specifically those who ran, no, in 2010. That they did right.
Digitally or in general?
In digital.
Photoshop,
What they did wrong in digital in 2010, that they did right in 2013. So may mali ba silang ginawa noong 2010 na sa tingin yung gumanda noong 2013?
Hindi ako expert, pero ito yung observation ko. Noong 2010, we would find Manny Villar's Twitter account simultaneously quoting himself while he's speaking. So that obviously indicates that it's not him on Twitter, right? And at that time, the magic of Twitter is that it's really them, right? And I think, seriously, if you don't like a senator or a congressperson and they reply to you, I think that wins you over. Because somehow nakinig sila, diba? And for Filipinos, I think the number one, whether we know it or not, the number one thing we look for in our politicians is accessibility, that they're listening, that they will reply. Even if you don't like their reply, tanga na nakinig, diba? Parang nag-reply, oh shit, nag-reply sa akin si whoever senator. And that's a plus. I think 2013, they start replying. I think 2013, the inanities come out, like having lunch with nyong nyong nyao. And while this seems inane and parang stupid to several people, you have to understand, yung magic yata ng Twitter is because it's 24/7, you can see the mood swings, alam mo kung ano kakainin, minsan profound, di ba? Pero hindi pwede profound 24/7, press release lang yun. But I think the 3D-ness of the presence of someone on Twitter adds to the charm of the politician. I think they used it well this time in 2013 because it adds to let's say Senator Cheese Escudero, also stuck in Quezon Ave, then the humanity happens, then the 3D happens. Hindi sila invincible, hindi sila anything. They complain about the same things we complain about, and etc. And I think that adds dimension to them. I think that's what they did right. This 2013. I mean, for this particular, compared to 2010.
How about you, Nines? What are your observations?
I guess from a campaigner, because I was also a campaigner in 2010, no? if you notice, noong 2010, it was paramihan ng likes, di ba? Villar page, etong likes, Pinoy, at the time, Noynoy Aquino page. So it was really paramihan ng likes, and that seemed to be the ultimate barometer. But now, people are seeing na, okay, it's not just about the likes pala, it's really about engagement. So, now you have politicians also caring about their clout scores, or in the case of my boss, hindi siya mahilig mag-tweet, pero mahilig siya mag-Instagram. So, grabe siya mag-Instagram. At a certain point, we're like, sir, you have to stop Instagramming. You're just posting too much. But, ganun nga, the humanity comes out na, it doesn't have to be a tailored message. I can say whatever I want. I can take selfies or selfies with others. And they learned to use the medium a bit more. But for the campaign teams, I think, there was less emphasis on the number of likes or the number of followers, but in what conversations have you engaged in, what's your influence like, and yun na, pagdating sa analytics, how are your positive and negative sentiments, diba? What's your net sentiment for the day, and then for the campaign teams, how are you able to really use the tracking and the analytical tools to see if your candidate was really gaining ground. For 2013 then, just a last point, it became very interesting to see Rappler's mood meter. Kasi, di ba, every time there was news about a particular candidate, so unahan yan, ano ba, annoyed, happy, ano ba yun, amused, inspired. So, people wanted to see not just the numbers, but how other people were reacting to particular politicians. So, the moods, the emotions, and I guess how they're able to sway that and influence that became a barometer as well.
Okay, so that's a pretty good answer. Speaking of which, were you part of Senator Pangilinan's staff before?
Yes.
Ipa-plug ko lang, no? If you're not following, hindi na siya senator, di ba?
Hindi na, farmer na siya.
Farmer.
So pag nakita mo yung tweets
one
niya.
of the most fascinating Twitter accounts that I follow today, former Senator Kiko Pangilinan, follow nyo siya.
Puro
Farmer mode. Seryoso, may picture ng manok na hinahabol niya or nasa living room. Sobrang interesting content. And it's him, di ba?
Yeah, it's really him. And di ba, whether for better or for worse, talagang, si Sir Hyper na naman on Twitter, or yung, for example, nung dumating yung rains, talagang sabi niya, naramdaman niya, oops, sorry. Wow, okay. Maraming gadgets. Mas maraming gadgets ngayon. But yan, in Senator Kiko's case, nakita rin natin yung transition niya from public servant to ngayon. It was all about farming. Tapos nung binagyo, syempre nasalanta rin yung farm niya. So sabi niya, ganito pala yung hirap na dinadanas ng mga farmers. Kasi na-feel niya yung, the storm ravaging his farm. So you see the humanity in people.
Talagang, which is actually one of Gang's observations earlier. So talking about 2013, di ba, there was a significant push, bigger push using digital. And we've been talking about the stats of digital users talagang going up. So do you think digital as a medium was able to really push the needle and get the votes for the candidates? A significant amount? Was it enough to really get them elected? Any of you?
I think only in the aspect of finally you hear about them. I think just in that. Because hindi mo i-vote someone you've never heard of. It's really big. I don't need to say that, but I think only in that aspect. But everything else, I think, ideally, for smarter voters naman, we goes back to the history of the candidate. Parang, we are a bit more aware of advertising processes. I think the voters now are aware of a tagline and a color linkage to the name. Mas aware na tayo ngayon eh. And the tagline is just a promise, but the history is evidence. So I'd like to imagine those who are becoming better voters, the digital part, palpably, I can only say that it's that finally more people hear about them, I think. That's all. I mean, I have no definitive answer on the other aspects. Maybe she does.
I think there was something released by Rappler, or I'm not sure which agency or company this was, but there was an analysis released about the 2013 elections, and the analysis was that the 2013 elections again helped publicize certain candidates, but it wasn't yet enough to make somebody win. So, for example, even the most organized candidates and for example, Teddy Casino, Risa Ontiveros, Dick Gordon, they had very, very organized social media armies. Tsaka grabe, di ba, yung mga memes, yung mga hashtags. Tapos, pagka meron sila mga forums, meron mga debates, grabe yung nakikita mo activity on Twitter and Facebook. But it wasn't enough yet to make them cross over. So, I guess it means na until we reach a certain penetration level of, you know, of internet usage, of digital media, hindi pa rin enough. So, it's maybe a function of the technology also.
Ako pala meron, pero medyo, first time ko naisip yung thought, so baka hindi pa siya coherent. Tingin ko meron pala, because you have to realize, traditional journalists also grab from people who are online. Stories, etc., etc. So kung meron nag-tweet na, shit, nakita ko itong candidate na to, ang sungit sa waiter. Pipick up yun ng traditional media, lalabas sa traditional media, maririnig ng mga kahit wala online. So I think in that sense, in terms of gathering stories, parang nag-back to front, oo, may effect. Kasi dumating siya sa traditional media, but that answer only proves one theory of mine, that social media really must go hand in hand with traditional media, and traditional media usually benefits from social media too, and they ruin each other as well in some aspects. And like any tool, it's usually the user that determines that, whoever the person is behind that. Pero in that aspect, baka natulungan yung iba. Kasi may mga reports din ng mga tumulong sa traffic, pinalitan niya yung flat tire ko, nyaw-nyaw, ganun. And you know how these like human stories capture the imagination of the voter, which also gave birth to a new skill of spin doctors, di ba? It also gave birth to a new spin. You have to figure out who spun this, you know, which ad agency. Baka naman he never really changed the tire and then they just made it a story. Pwede rin yun, di ba? Stage, like, moro-moro. Uso naman yan kahit kagabi, di ba? Parang uso yun. Then it'll again go back to, sino nagsabi? It goes back to the integrity of the person, of the source. So no matter how wide a net the technology can cast, parang kahit gaano kalaki pala yun, babalik lagi dun sa who is using, sino yung human being na nag-double click nun. Sino ang human being na nag-type nun at nag-click tweet. So, ang fascinating niya kasi pwedeng palayo siya ng palayo sa human aspect, and then ultimately, in the end, babalik siya sa integrity ng tao behind the machine. So I think that's one observation I had. So medyo incoherent ba yun? Parang ko lang naisip, oo nga no, kasi traditional media gets from us too. People
connected at the hip. No, I used to work for a TV network, and ganun talaga yung operations. It's
halimbawa,
really very close.
Halimbawa, yung sa Change.org, sorry, wala ko ibang context right now except Change.org. Nag-call yung former senior government officials for the ombudsman to hold an impartial probe. Boom, ang taas. Kasi may mga email yung mga kaibigan nila eh. So, boom. And then, bumaba siya one day, na-feature ng GMA7. Boom, umakyat. Bakit na-feature ng GMA7? Dahil may petition. So, nakuha nung traditional media from online media. At dahil minagnify ng traditional media, boom, umakit ulit yung response. So, pag ganun yung akit nun. Yung Luneta petition, nagsasign online, ang taas niya kasi ang dami tao sa Luneta eh. So, boom. And then, bumaba siya, a day and a half, na-feature ulit, parang when they were doing scenes from Luneta. Oh, there was a line, and what are they signing? And na-feature ng whatever, network, solar or something. Boom, umakit ulit. So, can you see how we feed off of, I think both sets of media feed off of each other. And going back, the fascinating thing is, it really came from the private citizen. It really came from the people like you, people like us, who tweet stories, who tweet hopefully truths, di ba? Who tweet opinions, leaning, ganyan. And they get stories from us. By they, I mean traditional media gets stories from us. And we, if we're lucky, if we have a story that needs magnifying, they magnify it for us, you know, and then it works.
Yeah, just to add to that, no, actually all the news networks, if I'm not mistaken, have social media desks. So they have people actually going through Twitter and Facebook and trying to spot anong content yung pwede nilang
May question
magamit.
ako for Carlo.
Yeah.
Pwede ba makitanong? Sorry, masanay
Okay.
ako nag-i-interview kaysa sumasagot.
Oh,
Carlo,
no.
do you think there is still space for a public official who is not digital? in this age?
In the Philippines, yes, right now. You know why? It's called the Binay phenomenon. Diba? The Nancy Binay phenomenon. Kung titingnan natin, everybody was against her online. Even traditional media worked on trying to demolish, hindi man demolish intentionally, but lahat na stories that were online were being picked up and it was being hit on her. No? Ako kasi I grew up in a political family. Diba? So, Ople. Yun. So, yung parents ko talaga local government. And I know for a fact na pagdating sa probinsya, iba pa rin talaga yung hina-house to house at kinakamayan. Na-experience ko yun eh. Inikot namin yung Bulacan para i-house to house for my dad. Tumatakbo lang siyang board member. Wow. At kailangan namin mag-house to house. So kada farm, yun yung first time na hulog ako sa palaisdaan. Tapos naramdaman ko yung mga hito, gumaganon sa akin.
Bumawi sila sa lahat ng hitong
nakinain ko. Tapos nung pinasakay ako, bakit di ka makatanggi? Kasi syempre, farmer, pagtitripan ka kasi mukha ka mayaman. Eh syempre, di ko naman alam no, naka-shorts pa ako, tsaka Lacoste t-shirt, tsaka kung ano-anong tsaka shoes. Sabi sa akin, Kuya, sakay ka dito. Okay to. Pinasakay ako sa Kalabaw. Ang sakit pala sumakay sa Kalabaw. Ibang level. Tapos nahulog pa ako. Diba? Okay. So, iba talaga yung pagdating sa provinces. And I'm not sure that that's something that can already be broken quickly. Talaga ikaw na moderator.
Oo, ako moderator. Sandali, sorry Okay lang ba? Okay lang, Rafi. Sige. Wait, can I say something?
Really
sorry,
awesome role
sobrang
reversal.
Teacher ako, no? Sige na nga, wag na.
Go. Okay lang.
Kaya ako bigla.
Go.
Sorry, meron pa lang sasabihin. Okay lang. Nung lumabas una yung email, alam niyo to, kung matagal na kayo nasa internet, nung unang lumabas yung email phenomenon, halos lahat, fake name. cutegirl88@hotmail.com,
Edsamil.
barely breathing at 44 whatever at yahoo.com, Edsamil, chuchu, whatever. And then, corporations picked it up as an official means of communicating. Dati fax di ba? Corporate picked it up as an official means of communication. In fact, one of the first ones I recall would be Buy and Tell. I'm a friend who worked in Buy and Tell were one of the first ones who had an internet address that was officially within office, and finally they needed to use their real names. Right? And then P&G picked it up, Unilever picked it up, etc., etc. Pero bago nun, lahat ng internet parang alternative universe na pwede kang may ibang personality doon, di ba? Pwede kang porn star level liberation, pero in real life, di ba nag-genuflect ka bago kumupo sa church, ganyan, whatever. We knew this. So when did the turn happen? As soon as email became an official way to communicate with each other, there was not a challenge. We were all compelled to use our real names as email addresses, because it's now officially accepted as correspondence between companies and people. So how did that change? The chat rooms. If you were in chat rooms, IRC, Internet Relay Chat, you never use your real name. Why? Because there's this concept of it's not safe, you don't want them to know who you are. And there was also that fascinating freedom of saying whatever you want to say, nobody knew who you were, right? Then eventually you get to find out, because they were eyeballs, they would meet up and, si Wingman 44 pala si Carlo, or di ba, si Cute Girl 88 pala si Nina, or di ba, si
Cute Girl 88.
si Bangag on Tuesdays pala si Gang, parang ganon. And then it became, which means the divide between cyber life and real life kind of getting blurred. You're now asked to be more consistent. You're not anymore entitled to have your online personality because it's already your name there. Which translates to, wala pa masyadong impact yata yung digital whatever sa Kamayan campaign. But you know that's where it's gonna go.
Correct.
Because before, an email felt impersonal. Now it feels real, doesn't it? Before, a typewritten letter felt impersonal. Now if it's typewritten and there's a signature but it's still paper, it feels more personal pa than email, di ba? So, which goes to show, nag-changing perception natin of how we communicate, of our real presence. 3D human presence is slowly taking the face of pixels, of gigabytes, of what we send. Before, if you shoot out an there was a transition phase, and this is an indication of it. There was a electronic greeting card face. You know that? Yung may happy birthday, may gumagalaw na flower. Because it had to replace somehow the transition from a greeting card that's actually printed and mailed, and email. Tama? So yun yung gitna yata tingin ko eh. But now, if an email now feels just as personal when it didn't used to, you can imagine how a tweet now feels just as personal when a handshake did it before. After a while, a tweet replied to you by a politician will feel as warm as him carrying your baby. I think that's where we're going. So that's where we're headed. I think slowly, maybe.
2016.
Easy, if you backtrack from where we started and to where we are now, it's safe to conclude that that's where we're going. I'm not saying that's really where we're going because I'm not certain, I'm not definitive, but judging from where we came from, I think it's safe to conclude that a tweet of a politician will be almost tantamount to a handshake in the barangay hall someday.
May dagdag akong anecdote dyan. Siguro as support to what Gang said, no, ang dami ngayon nagre-request ng pag-greet po ng pa-fan sign po kay Senator Bam. So, it's my birthday today. Pwede po bang makunan siya ng fan sign, then can you post it on Instagram or Twitter? And si boss naman, di ba? So, sometimes you say, sir, do you want us to just print the happy birthday? Ganun. Well, pwede din. Okay. So when we tell him na, sir, meron po nagpapabate, gusto nyo ba nakaprint na lang? Hindi, sulat natin. So talagang susulat pa siya na, okay, happy birthday. Smile, di ba? And then na-notice niya, ang dami talagang nagpapa-happy birthday. So parang we got into a conversation na, okay, do we digitize it? Sabi niya, hindi, it has to be real. So for him, it has to be real. So kung ilan man yung nagpapa-congratulations, good luck, di ba, whatever mga board exams, ganyan. So, sige, personalize. So, ganun, parang you're bringing the authenticity of the offline space to online and nakikita kasi ng tao pag fake di ba? So, automated yung e-greeting, parang it's too impersonal. So now, because there's Instagram, because you're seeing people in real life 24/7, you want it to be, yun nga, more authentic and more, in a way, more organic, even if it's digital.
Just an example, no? Ako favorite public servant ko ngayon, dahil lang sinasagot niya ako palagi, kahit feeling ko di niya naman ako kilala, si Lasherda. Kasi he always replies.
Ople yung apelido mo.
Well, basta anyway, he always replies. So parang kahit inaaway ko siya, hindi inaaway ko na talaga siya kung ano na sinasabi ko eh. Palagi pa rin siya nagre-reply. So natutuwa akong nagre-reply siya sa akin.
Yun naman yung democracy, yung engaging. And if, kung mas mature tayo ng konti, we know agreement is not the indication more is a response, is a conversation more than the agreement, because if we're a bit smarter than we used to be, we know that uniformity was never tantamount to unity, and diversity certainly never meant discord. And in a democracy, that's how it is. If you study the heroes, because it's on record that Bonifacio's camp disagreed with the methods of the Rizal camp and etc. But they all had the same dream. Rizal advised Bonifacio, wag muna mag-revolt kasi kulang pa yung armas natin. Bonifacio thought, kailan pa, di ba, etc. They argued with each other, and that I think ganoon din tayo ngayon. And I think that's the method. I'm glad that there's friction. We'd rather have this than zero engagement.
Okay, so siguro 2 more points before we close. By the way, Boomerang Awards to those who were shortlisted.
Dun ba si Lord?
Dun siya. So it's in, saan ulit siya?
Manansala.
Manansala. Okay, so sa mga gusto pumunta, right after this ba kagad? Diretso kagad doon?
Kung ayaw niyo pumunta doon, maglo-launch kami ng Rock Bonifacio album sa Bonifacio High Street. Rock Supremo.
So kung wala kayo doon, pwede kayo pumunta doon.
Radioactive Sago kasi sa amin muna siya. That's why I asked yung ba yung
doon muna siya, sana hindi siya
Radioactive
matraffic.
Sago, Tarsius, Dong Abay, Periodico, Ebedancel, Kaya Nasan, Pesa Movement, yung bagong banda ni Francis Reyes, and Ballet Philippines.
Yes, a new band.
It's called Rock
sorry.
Supremo.
Sorry.
Doon sa gitna ng Krispy Kreme tsaka Nike. So kasi jogging muna kayo, tapos kain kayo ng donut, sunod kayo ng Kung hindi kayo pupunta sa Manansal. But it's before that.
Okay, good
Kasi
job.
kakanta muna si Lord sa amin, tapos masasalita siya doon yata.
Okay, game. So 2 things lang na I think a lot of people are curious about. No? Kasi I asked Twitter kanina ano yung mga gusto nilang pag-usapan dito. 2 things came out lang. One of the things we use digital for a lot, especially for politicians, is really crisis. No? How to handle crisis. And ang daming politiko nagkakaroon ng crisis and talaga nagsaspark online. So siguro, first question, one of the last 2 questions I'd like to throw at the group is, sabihin natin, if linapitan ka ngayon ng mga senador na implicated sa kay Napoles. Di ba? Apat ba sila o anim? Sa anim yata sila. Let's say lumapit sila sa inyo. Tapos kayo, you put on your consultant or public relations or advertising hat and they ask you, ano ba dapat gawin ko? What would you tell them?
Wow, that's hard
Sumuko ka na, tangina mo.
Advertising hat nga, hindi aktivista.
Citizen hat, hindi
citizen hat.
Mahirap yun, oo. Mahirap yun kasi, well, just to put it on the record, I would probably never, I would never work for anyone like that.
Kung kailangan. Theoretically lang.
Wow.
Beauty contest.
Mahirap yun, hindi ako nag-prepare for that, hindi. Hindi, kasi...
Ako may sagot.
Sige, ikaw muna. Hindi, kasi, hindi, sige, ikaw muna. Mag-iisip
Okay, kung kailangan ko, like, kung federally required for me to advise someone, kasi by default, hindi, let me put that on the record, I will let them hang to dry if they come to me. Interesting concept to, Shut up. No tweet, no press con, no nothing. No, nothing. Because sometimes, especially in this day and age, sometimes silence is the best press con. I don't know what your political affiliations are. Senator Marcos is quiet. That's smart. Not a peep. It's very smart. And which goes to show, Twitter is like a rally where everybody has a megaphone. Sometimes you are most heard when you do not say anything. So yes, if they come to me and they ask for my advice and I'm required to reply, I will say, peep, not a peep.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree kasi I will not name names, but
Go na.
hindi pwede. Baka
May
magalit.
insider tayo eh. Di ba?
Name names na. Wala magti-tweet.
Lalabas ka sa adobo, di ba?
Hindi, example lang, mag-guess nyo to through the example. Nung elections, di ba merong candidate naglabas ng promo? Okay. Tapos, pero, I mean, ako lang, yung personal sense ko dyan was, it was aggravated by the fact na they were, their campus sending mixed signals na, Twitter account ko yun, ay, hindi, staff ko yun, ay, hindi, ganun. So, ganun din, in that case, yung, siguro, just take down the promo quietly, and then let it blow over. Kasi then, for better or for worse, there's also some truth to the fact na, medyo short ang attention spans ng mga tao. So, siguro kung tumahimik sila, baka in 2 weeks, over na siya, 'di ba? Tapos palitan na lang ng bagong issue, 'di ba? Make noise about some other advocacy, some other issue they really care passionately about and that they know other people care about as well. Pero yung ganun it's even worse to say something when number one, you don't know what to say. Number two, marami kang gustong sabihin na pagpapatsi-patsi mo siya or if you're simply going to spin something that's not true. So, quiet na lang.
Okay, so magandang point yon. Sana wag dumating sa kanila, no? Sana wag nilang gawin yon. Okay.
Alam na natin kung sino sila.
Sobrang yabang ng mga putang inang yun. Hindi kaya nila mag-keep quiet.
Ito na yata yung exciting panel for the last 2 days.
No, seriously, their ego is just... I don't think they'll keep quiet.
Uy, ngayon lang ako nakarinig ng palakpak na hindi pa tapos. Wow, good job. Congratulations. I've been here for the last 2 days. This is the first time na may pumalakpak na hindi keynote, na hindi pa tayo tapos.
They're so ego-driven that it is so hard for them to keep silent. Seriously, they will say things like, di ba sila humingi? Di ba? Tanga. Parang, or they will, hindi ko masyadong friend yun, di ba? Tapos may happy birthday picture, it doesn't make sense. Hindi ko masyadong kaibigan yun, magkapit-bahay. Parang ganun. Tanga rin ng mga yan eh. And I'm glad because we're smarter than them. I'm glad that we're smarter than them. No, they're not stupid, sorry. They're just so arrogant. They're just so entitled that sometimes it gets in the way of good decision making. For example, messaging talaga is key. Messaging meaning what info you say and what quote you hold back on. For example, Lali Mercado. It's out. She said, kung kakancel niyo yung PDAF, sabihin mo sa constituents namin, wag humingi, di ba? If you logically look at it, may katwiran siya. But she should have said, pero meron akong 500 scholars. Kung i-cancel niyo yung PDAF, find that institution or mechanism that will make sure that my scholars are not dropped.
Amen.
It means the same thing, right? Then you should have just thought of it that way. But then that's how it is. And yes, almost all of them are silent now because most of them know that that's the best course right now because you can't really say anything right now. They're the ones in the spotlight. So some of them are smarter than others.
Yeah. Kailangan kalampagin para magsalita sila. Okay, so for the last question before we end the...
Baka meron silang question.
Sige. Sige, may magtataas ng kamay.
Hello, my name's Maria. I'm from Rappler. I just wanted to say thank you for your mentions. I think we really appreciate knowing that the mood meter and things like that are actually really gaining traction. My question just is that three of you come from very different industries. How do you feel that we can further amplify your message based on the content that we put together?
I want a vomit button on the mood. Sometimes parang I'm not that annoyed and I'm not that, parang kulang yung angry. I want vomit. Hindi lang ako lang. I'm just kidding.
I think what would be interesting to see is how you're going to be able to translate the moods into actions later, diba? Kasi there's so much discussion already going on. And that's why when we crowdsourced the Magna Carta for Internet Freedom, it was really a case of too much discussion on Twitter, let's take it on Facebook and actually start drafting on Google Docs. So, yon, from the mood meter, from emotions, how do you make sure that people actually move? So whether it's signing a petition or gathering somewhere or, physically doing something to collaborate on these things.
Sure, go ahead.
Maria, I have one thing. Maybe I'd like to ask for help every now and then. If there is a very sensible, steady comment, maybe someone can tweet it to me or message me because we might be able to get in touch with that person if she or he is interested into converting his or her statement into a petition and see if people agree with her in the form of signing.
Great.
As shown in the Million-Person March, People March Monday, it's easy to judge a petition and say this is the rally of the lazy. But it's now, because of the last couple of weeks and the motion, it's also safe to view a petition as the jumpstart where people find out about petition issues.
Yeah.
It's also a jumpstart of how they get together and they can feel a sense of belongingness, I suppose, with other people who agree because they signed the same thing they signed. And then it becomes a 3D participation as seen Monday. So I encourage you to use change.org, not for my job or anything. I think it's great. It's great to amplify your voice. For example, the former senior government officials, they had a statement. Yeah. It was typed on a letterhead and scanned and posted. I actually was the one who got in touch with them and I said, would you like to make this into a petition just to see if people agree with you? Because technically, ang petition, ang change.org ay nagsasabi, I feel this way and I propose these solutions. Do you feel the same way? And it's like a collective high five. I do, tama ka. And I think I was just telling Manny here, I think lahat ng inuman may splendid idea na lumalabas. Kung translate nyo yun into a petition with concrete things. And so, maybe, just a personal favor, Marie, if there's someone or a very, very sensible comment that can be converted into a petition to see if other people agree with that person, especially if there is a specific petition person and a specific calls to action. I would really love to hear about them because I don't think I have time to go through all the comments, but I'm sure somebody does in the Rappler office. Yeah. We really appreciate that. We get in touch with that comment person and then ask if he or she wants to make it into a petition. I think that's a concrete request.
Okay, thank you. I'll keep that in mind then.
I have something to add. Sorry, I have something to add, and just to build on what both of you said. Kasi in our office, one of the first marching orders of Senator Bam was, we have to make sure that our website can hold crowdsourced comments from our bills. Number one, wala pa kaming budget, wala pa kaming sweldo, therefore wala pa kaming website. So I actually brought this up to Maria and Beth from Rappler, and I said, how can we use Rappler and actually change.org, because you were one of our pegs, to crowdsource the bills that we'd like to put out. For example, the People's Fund bill. Right now, the only way we're crowdsourcing is on Facebook, Badoy, diba? So, tsaka medyo, pero okay lang, because that's where the people are. But at a certain point, we hope that some of our bills can be crowdsourced through your platforms, and at the same time, inaabangan din namin yung mga petitions that are gaining ground, because for us, if there's a certain petition that falls within, for example, trade and commerce, support for entrepreneurs, etc., within Senator Bam's purview, then okay, this is gaining ground, maybe we can turn it into a bill. So, ganun naman. So, a comment can be turned into a petition can be turned into a bill. So, it can spark maybe some collaboration among our sectors.
Sure. Thank you.
Oh,
We're good? Thanks, guys.
yes, sir. Just tell me if we're out of time, because I'll just let this go on until they have questions.
Okay. Hi. My name is Christopher Atienza, Infinity. I just wanted to ask regarding crowdsourcing and consulting people, although it's a very popular thing to do, but that being said, there are certain issues that need people to speak about, but there are issues that you need to stand as a leader. For example, for VAT, for example, where do you draw the line? I mean, how would you draw the line in terms of politicians or people in power? Thanks.
Thanks for the question. That's a very good one. The way we do it in the office, that's how I'll answer it na lang, is that, we always hold consultations with experts. So, diba, you always have to find the balance between the wisdom of the crowd and the experts. So the consultation with experts is always ongoing. So whether it's, in our case, it's NEDA, it's DTI, government officials, there are other advocacy groups that we also consult with. Then there's the online crowd. But Senator Bam also always cautions us, don't just go with the comments na pinakamaraming likes, ha, or the comments that are very popular, because sometimes you'll find the best ideas in the outlier suggestions. So it's really a matter of, again, listening and finding a balance. So you need to have the citizen's point of view. You need to have the expert's point of view. Sometimes you'll gravitate toward one side more than the other, but the important thing is to get a balance. And then you decide based on that and based on circumstances.
Okay, any other questions? No more. Kanina may mga nagtaas. Ganda pa man din na statement ko na, oh yeah, yan. Go.
I'll make this really fast. I'm Miko Hernandez from Havoc Digital. Hey.
Represent, Mike.
Really simple lang. Hey, Mike. Really simple lang. Do you think the impact of digital was significant during the 2013 elections, votes-wise? Kasi, diba, technically, we're not all connected. Not the whole Philippines has an internet connection. We're still a third world country. There are still areas in the Philippines where we rely on traditional media, people going to door to door, handing out hats on their rallies. I think, but the question is lang, do you think, would you agree that traditional media, that traditional methods are dominant and we're just supplemented by digital? So, yun lang. Do you think the impact of digital was significant in the elections this year?
Sige, I'll answer that in two parts. Okay, first part, again, I'll be quoting Rappler because I came from the Think PH summit last Friday, and Senator Grispo was a speaker there. And her story was that, she wasn't a front runner online. Sabi nga niya, at that time, her goal was to have around 60,000 likes on Facebook by the end of the campaign. And kami naman, we were already doing 140,000, 140 toward the campaign. But sa kanya, 60,000 was already her high target. And she admitted at that summit that, online wasn't really the strength of her campaign, but she came out number one. So that's one part of the question. Another part of the question, if you look at the candidates from 2013 who were really ranking highly, so that would be Brother Eddie, Teddy Casino was doing fairly well.
This is online, no?
Oo,
Online.
diba? Risa Ontiveros, and nga, toward the end, si Dick Gordon. Sadly, most of the people who did really well online were not able to make it to the Magic 12. So you still really see a disconnect. In our case, we were around number 3 online. We were number 7 in the actual polls. But a lot of our numbers came from the Visayas and Mindanao, which are largely, still not as connected digitally, or diba, not as active as people in the urban areas.
Maybe I'll just take a quick shot at that question. Sure. I think it has something to do with how agencies and politicians still do digital for campaigns. I think they're still stuck on the mentality that it should be a megaphone, when in fact the true power of digital in an election setting is using it not as a megaphone, but using it as a means for organization purposes, for market research, for knowing how to customize your message for specific parts of the country, for specific parts of the citizenry. And I haven't seen a politician do it like that. And it's amazing because that kind of campaigning using digital has been promoted since Obama used it in 2000 whatever. And there's not one politician to date that has used it that way. Kumbaga, best example ko, social media team ni Obama, and this is I think on record, the biggest part of the team is the analysts and the data people. Yung people using it as a megaphone, 3. Yun na. So I think there has to be a massive paradigm shift for the digital industry for us to be able to support our clients who are politicians, who are public servants, who want to run in 2016. This is my my ad agency hat and consultant hat. So that we're able to really hit the objective that they want, which is to convert people to votes and not just raise awareness. I think that's how I would answer it. Okay?
Meron
Ay,
slight
sige, go.
answer. Ay, sorry, umupo na siya. Wag na. Mamaya, usap na lang tayo mamaya.
Hindi ko, sige, tas we'll end na lang.
Magandang analogy yata yung sa sanay akong tumatayo. Teacher kasi ako, so hindi ako sanay mag-explain na naka-D4. Pero sige, okay lang. Pag ganito kasi parang inuman eh, di ba? Yung change.org petition sa Luneta, mas 42, 48,000, maybe 47,000 yung live na nag-sign. Yung pumila, umikot yung papel, ganyan. 16,000 yung may sariling telepono na dun mismo nag-sign sa Luneta. Anong gagawin namin sa papel? Isa-scan. Kung may mahanap kami, may mauto kami na mag-input nun, merong input yon. Pero right now, 3 lang kami. So, ang mangyayari doon, isasubmit siya. I think the one that's addressed is Congress or perhaps the Office of the President. When we submit it, there will still be a printout of all the signatures, like all the scanned. And there's a digital, when we formally turn over the petition that they should formally receive, because we must say to the people who signed na nabigay namin, at 2 weeks later, pwede kaming magsabi na nabigay namin, hindi pa sila nagre-reply. Di ba? Lakas ng boses, di ba? So technically, parang ganun din yung itsura yata nung analog, digital, real life, 2D, 3D tulungan when it comes to deciding winners, whether be it an issue or a person. There's always that. You have to come together. Like, there are only 3 people in Change.org Philippines. Only 3 people. In the world, it's also like maybe less than 60. But for at least 37 are engineers. Backroom. Katulad ng sa kanya. Managing the system, the program, the consistency, or etc. The reason why I agreed to be a consultant for Change.org is because in 2010, I was the one that started DearNoyNoy.com. DearNoyNoy.com is just a Dropbox of letters where before you write, you check, is this for roads, education, health, etc. Sa back end nun, 3 lang kami. May Google Docs na which cabinet secretary should receive it. Kahit Dear Noynoy yung nakalagay doon, Dear Noynoy may lubak sa harap namin, grade 4 pa lang ako may lubak na, college na ako may lubak pa rin. Even if it says Dear Noynoy, pinapasa namin sa DPWH. Because one of the things that we have to learn is to complain intelligently and a bit more asintado. Pag traffic, kasalanan din ni Noynoy, di ba? Parang gano'n. Pag lahat, kasalanan ng presidente. But parang gano'n yung nangyayari. So, yung metrics, analytics, engineers, and tech absolutely has to come in and absolutely has come in and it has been optimized. But I will end with this. It will still always go back to the human being using, double-clicking, and showing up that will make all the difference. The engineers, the software, the websites, they can only do so much. Even the requirement of integrity will still fall on the hands of the human being, I think. So I think that's my point.
Okay, we'll take one last question because we have one more person, but we'll end there. Yes, Sean? Tama ba
Hi,
yan?
yeah. Hi, Carlo. Long time no see. Yeah, I'm Sean General from Havas PR Ragatep. In line to your topic a while ago about the White House, about Obama, I noticed kasi that one of the tenets of social media is that its strength is in demonstrating a strength of somebody or something, maybe a politician or a product. Okay, and with the White House kasi,
when Obama won in 2008, he had a weekly one-on-one discussion with the Americans by giving a status report, like 20-minute long status report that he's been doing. But but now he's no longer doing it. He doesn't have the time. And I was thinking, is there any manifestation of that ever happening here in the Philippines? Holistically, I mean, si Obama, the executive branch did that. No doubt about, let's say, other executives, maybe, I guess, Aquino is doing a great job in Facebook, by crowdsourcing and then by giving some updates. Pero I was thinking, is there a way, like some mechanism that we can do holistically where the government can tell us, hey, we repaired this road in EDSA. Hey, we added more schools here. Because personally, as a citizen, I don't feel any change at all. I mean, I looked at the Manila Standard today, and it said there that the Philippines increased the economy by 12%, the highest in Asia in the second quarter. But yet, I don't feel the infrastructure improving here in the Philippines at all. I mean, I went to Baguio, to Davao this year, and hardly anything has changed.
Go Nines.
The government answer first before the citizen answer. You're right in certain points na, we're supposed to be a breakout nation. I think we were mentioned in a book by that title. So we're supposed to be a breakout nation. Kami din, bakit pag konting ulan lang, bumabaha pa rin the baha in Vito Cruz just gets worse every year. And ganun din, lubak yung kalye, lubak pa rin ngayon. Actually, mas lubak pa kaysa dati. But at the same time, I'll point to certain examples. Anyone here has used MMDA on Twitter? Diba? To me, that is one outstanding example of how, a formerly lackluster government agency, I mean, really, in the years before this, who trusted MMDA? Diba? Nobody. But because of the great fusion of people with integrity and technology and, the environment na people were actually tuning into Twitter and reporting and posting pictures, a service like MMDA was really revolutionized. So, meron pang case na nawawala yung kotse at driver ko. Tinanong ko pa sa MMDA, meron po bang kotse na ganito yung make, na ganitong plate number na aksidente anywhere? Because I couldn't find my driver and they actually replied, meaning they took the time to track if my car was somewhere. So, but that's one little example. I think the challenge for government really is how to centralize all that data. Because you will find it. You will find it in gov.ph. If you tune into the official gazette, si Yusek Manolo Quezon and his team, matyaga silang maglagay ng updates online. MMDA is a great example. DOST Pag-asa is another great example. Yes, Project NOAA definitely is a great example as well. Ano pa ba? MMDA. Marami pa. A lot more in government have yet to catch up. Like, for example, it took forever for DepEd, I think, to have a Twitter account. Diba? Parang nauna yung mga LGUs and the stations to use the hashtag walang pasok. So, may mga pockets. DBM is also doing a really good job of publishing all the, if you want to check the PDAF releases of the past few years, check it on the DBM website. You'll see it there. I will also venture to say that, this is also an administration that's very open to change. Feeling ko, and this is a personal sentiment, this is not an official statement, na kung if we were under a different administration, under different circumstances, that COA report would probably never even have surfaced. But the fact that it's out there, that people can see it, people have downloaded it, that, the DBM publishes every release it's made, means that we're taking the right steps. Pero the challenge is really, how do you centralize? How do you tell people where to go to a single hub for all that information?
Yeah. In the US, it's whitehouse.gov,
Yes.
where you see all of that info happening nationwide.
Right now, gov.ph is, trying to do it, but again, there's so much out there, and feeling ko it will take another year, another few years, and maybe past this administration to be able to put everything together. But you will see pockets if you're matyaga to check online.
I'll just add my quick 2 cents lang. I think they have great engineers, they have great content, but they don't have anybody specifically that knows much about UI and UX. The content is there, the data is there, but it's not presented in a sexy way that's made relevant to the people. So siguro suggestion to government, if they can get somebody to handle the overall user experience for all of that, then I think it would be much, much better presented to the people. Diba? Gam, do you want
Meron
to
akong,
add?
may notes ako kasi I tend to ramble, so I did notes. Meron akong slightly disappointing answer, tingin ko. To answer, how do we disseminate info like White House? Unfortunately, parang we need to rely on our LGUs, our local governments, to do that by district. By unfortunately, I mean they're not all gung-ho about that. However, they also make it clear if they were the ones who paid for the waiting shed, di ba? So, minsan, yung Makati nga, JB yung logo, hindi walang JOB sa word na Makati. Kahit isama mo yung word na city, wala pa rin JOB dun di ba? Pero they make it clear. So, why is it, so, hopefully the information dissemination must be by districts or by local government. Because if it comes from one umbrella, we're not there yet, but that's the goal. Absolutely, that's the goal. We should work towards that. Yung 12% or 7% jump in economy, napaka-abstract dun sa akin kasi hindi ako economics expert. And like you, naghahanap din ako ng palpable indication na, 12%. Parang umakit nga. Pero if you're a student of economics, you know that it's not how it works. Unfortunately, ito pa yung disappointing answer ko. I don't even agree anymore in investing so much on infrastructure. Stop making ARCO, waiting shed, basketball court, whatever. Only build, let's say, protective landslide walls, better sewers, etc. I think it's about time as a chunk of the budget goes in investing in people more than infrastructures. But if you really want your company, your city to say you are now driving to Paniki, Tarlac, there's always a way to do it. Every district has a university that probably has an art department that can do installation art. And if it gets, pag nasira ng bagyo, mag-build ng isa pa, recycled material naman di ba? Grabe pa, i-compute mo yung na-spend sa lahat ng ARCO, sa lahat ng distrito. Kahit yung ngayon sila gumbay dun sa Leon Heights, di ba? May semento talaga, may mga planters paakit ng Antipolo, ganyan. Kung i-compute mo yon, that could have been invested in people. But when you invest in people, let's say education, retooling, training, we don't feel that 7%. Eventually, we will. So what is required of us? Patience, talagang vigilant, etc. At tayo naman maghanap na ng info, di ba? Tayong maghanap ng info, tayong maghanap ng access to this info, at tayong marunong gumawa ng website. Gumawa ka ng Citizen Bantay Buwis website and get the information and do it yourself, right? Right now, I have friends who are building a portal on what is PDAF 101. Meron ngayon, it's ongoing right now, we haven't put it up yet. And in exchange, and this is the tough part, in exchange, I think the government should make information available.
FOI.
Well, pwede, papunta doon, pero alam ko ang daming intricacies ng FOI, but certainly the goal is available information because sayang hindi tayo first road, sayang hindi tayo kasing sharp nung White House, pero baka papunta tayo doon. Maybe this is the phase. Maybe this is the first, second, third phase. Maybe that's where we can go. But certainly as new media literate people, it's really up to us to look for the info. But then there are institutions like DOST with Project NOAA. There are institutions like MMDA. COA now, it's available, but it's just an Excel file. So, di ba? Medyo naduduling ako by the time I got to Matias Defensor, donating to Matias Defensor Senior. Parang nahilo na ako by that time. Yes, information. And absolutely, I agree with everything you said. That's really the goal. And my answer is, what can we do about this? Appreciate that the percentage they tell us is an abstraction, and then maybe accept that this is the sacrificial generation that might need to invest first in non-tangible, non-cemento things for now. but invest in education, in people who are a bit more literate, better critical thinking down the road. And then maybe we won't feel it in our generation, maybe not, but maybe we will, because things are moving faster like than they ever did before. So maybe that's the ideal. But certainly everybody here in this room has the responsibility to look for the information. If you can't find it, and then you demand the government and say, can't find this info. Maybe you should make it available. And then you make a petition. And then you ask Rappler to feature it. And then you tell Bam Aquino to whatever it, di ba? That's how it goes. I guess that's my answer, but I am so one with you in what you're trying to suggest, and definitely that's the goal.
And that, I think, is the perfect way to end the panel. Thank you, Gang and Nines. Thank you, everybody. And ako, masaya lang ako kasi I moderated the panel kahapon. Ngayon lang talaga nakita na may pumalakpak na hindi pa tayo tapos. Yes! So, achievement. Thank you, everybody.